Hello, welcome to ITV's Royal Rota. So we're just both back from Belfast, where we've been with Prince Charles and Camilla. Lizzie's been in court with Meghan, or at least with Meghan's
legal team. I haven't seen Meghan.
And it's been one of those weeks where there's a lot to report on all different members of the royal family, other than the Queen and Duke of Edinburgh, I think. But we've got something on Charles and Camilla, William and Kate,
Meghan and Harry.
Meghan and Harry, not royal family, brackets.
And David Attenborough,
who's just
royalty.
We like Sir David Attenborough.
Sir David Attenborough is also.
Yes. So why don't you do Robinson's Royal Rundown, and then we can discuss all those various members of the royal family and former members of the royal family.
So Sir David Attenborough popped in for a screening of his new film at Kensington Palace, and he also gave Prince George a shark's tooth, a fossilised shark's tooth.
Quite an old one, but we can talk about where he got it from shortly.
And who wants it back, and who's changed their mind about wanting it back. Yep. As you say, we've been in Northern Ireland. The Prince of Wales and Duchess of Cornwall were there for a series of engagements yesterday, so Wednesday, and we were with the Duchess as she visited a domestic violence charity and saw the kind of important work that they're doing. Harry and Meghan this week have firstly denied claims that they are going to be involved in a fly-on-the-wall reality series. The Duchess lost the latest round in her pre-trial court case on the letter that she wrote to her father, the privacy case with the Mail on Sunday. Prince Charles made a very moving tribute this week on National Police Memorial Day, and the Duchess of Cambridge became joint president of the Scout Association.
And cooked marshmallows on a campfire.
She did. So a very varied week, and yes, quite a lot to talk about.
Yeah, varied week, lot to talk about. And the, as usual, problem, where to start? I think I want to talk about sharks and sharks' teeth.
Okay.
So I don't know whether that's what you've got in front of you at the moment.
It is actually, for the first time ever, I think.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, well, we must have been in agreement for once. So Sir David Attenborough popped into Kensington Palace, not only to meet Prince William, but also Kate, George, Charlotte and Louis. Bought a present for George, the aforementioned shark teeth, and then they sat and watched David Attenborough's new film, which actually is going to cinemas first, isn't it, before it ends up on Netflix?
Yeah, so the new film, David Attenborough, A Life on Our Planet.
Right.
It is described as a first-hand account in which Sir David reflects on the defining moments of his life as a naturalist and the devastating changes he has witnessed. And it was in cinemas in the UK on Monday, and then it goes to Netflix next week, I think.
And if, as usual problem, if you're watching on YouTube, you can now see the picture that I'm about to refer to. If you're listening on a podcast, then just head to our social media pages. Instagram is probably best for this one, at ITV News Royals. And there you will see a picture of the two of them, incidentally sat in the wrong chairs. Apparently, so we're told, Sir David Attenborough sat in William's chair, which left William with Sir David's chair. But he's wrapped up in a tartan blanket.
It wasn't the nicest day in the UK.
Cool
on
day
that day
in the UK that day, and clearly they had to watch the whole thing outside because of social distancing and all the rest of it, coronavirus. Don't forget, David Attenborough is a very elderly gentleman.
94.
Same age as the Queen, isn't he? There's something like, we've discussed this before, 10 days between them or something, both born in 1926. So the film, very important to watch. I think anyone will not disagree on that front. But he brought a present for George. And he found it in Malta in the 1960s, and this tooth is quite old.
It's a fossilised giant shark's tooth.
Yes, there's a Latin name for it, I believe.
There is.
Yes.
Which means the Latin name means big tooth.
And what is the Latin name?
Yeah, it's here in front of me, but I'm not even going to attempt it.
So he found it in Malta on a family holiday in the 1960s. He found it under a rock or something. I can't remember.
It was embedded in the island's soft yellow limestone.
Embedded in a rock is
as good as.
Soft yellow limestone of the island. And then, I mean, we can't quite work out whether Malta actually wanted the thing back or whether they were just doing a bit of sabre rattling and a bit of political posturing. But one of the, was it a minister in Malta who said actually this tooth belongs in a Maltese museum, not in a palace in London?
Yeah, the culture minister said he wanted it back, but quite quickly, I mean, less than 24 hours, they changed their mind and said, actually, we have no intention of asking for this tooth back.
Right. So I mean, it leads you to believe it might have been a bit of political posturing or national sabre rattling in Malta.
But we do understand these teeth are quite common in
quite numerous. The shark had
Malta.
quite a few, apparently.
And there are quite a few sharks.
23 million years ago, these sharks had quite a few teeth, and those teeth have found their way onto the beaches of Malta. Because obviously Malta was a British colony up until the sort of 1960s. Anyway, so the tooth, it looks like, will remain in Kensington Palace, wherever George plans to keep it, but he looked very happy with it, didn't he?
Pictures were lovely. I particularly like the one of the 5 Cambridges and Sir David. You could just see the excitement, particularly on Charlotte's face at meeting Sir David. And we know that the Cambridge children are, as Kate has previously said, massive fans of Sir David Attenborough. Yep. And George is also a massive fan of dinosaurs, so this really couldn't be more exciting for them.
Interestingly, in the programme information, we told you last week that there's a documentary that Prince William has participated in, which is on ITV on Monday. And in that documentary, when William and Kate went up to meet Sir David Attenborough up in the northwest of England, the Duchess of Cambridge says in this film, the children were very upset that we were coming to see you and they weren't coming. They are massive fans of yours. So that was, I think that happened about this time last year, wasn't it? When we were in Africa, I seem to recall. Or maybe the year before when we were in...
Oh.
No, this is very interesting. I don't know whether it says it here. No, it doesn't. Anyway.
I think it was last year, actually.
The point being that this programme is on Monday. There's some interesting things in it. And actually an interesting quote that's been released by Kensington Palace about how William sees his role and how both his grandfather, the Duke of Edinburgh, Prince Philip, and his father, Prince Charles, were ahead of their time.
Yeah, and he says that he wants to make sure that in 20 years George doesn't turn around to him and say, are you ahead of your time? Because if he does, we're too late.
If he does, we're too late is the key quote.
This all ties in quite nicely to the work that, Prince William is doing a lot of work, environmental work at the moment, but this all ties in quite nicely to his Earthshot Prize, which will be launched next week on the 8th of October. And we understand that this is considered to be the biggest thing that William has ever done.
Yes, so the Earthshot Prize, which again, I think we spoke about earlier this year, didn't it? It was Kensington Palace released the details of the prize itself on New Year's Eve or New Year's Day.
But it's going to launch officially on the 8th, and we're going to get a lot of details next week. So
yes, they're talking about a massive prize, some kind of ceremony every year, and they've got some very big names, apparently, that they're going to reveal that are going to be supporting this Earthshot Prize. The thought behind it is that over the next decade, this is the key decade that we're in at the moment, 2020 to 2030. And whilst the world's attention is immediately and rightly on the coronavirus pandemic at the moment, a lot of people have been saying in recent times, not least Prince Charles, who we told you about last week, was saying that actually the bigger problem in the longer term is climate change.
Yeah, and this prize is all about inspiring action and kind of the best ideas on how we can repair our planet, rather than, I think there's a lot of focus on criticising what we do wrong. This prize is intended to kind of inspire how we can live sustainably and repair the damage we've done. One
example would be, for example, how to fly sustainably, how to have a carbon-free flight.
So, I think there's no denying that, we shouldn't stop living, but it's how you live sustainably, and the Earthshot Prize is designed to kind of come up with ideas on how we can all live a more sustainable life while doing the things that we want to do.
So let's see where that goes in this decade, but more details on that in the coming days. Meanwhile, Kate has been made president of the Scouts. She was, I don't think she lit the fire, but she was certainly toasting a marshmallow on the fire. Some good pictures of her.
Lovely pictures
not only
of her.
Roasting the marshmallow, but also scoffing it afterwards.
I think eating delicately is what we would say.
As royals do. But yes, so she's now the joint president, isn't she, of the Scouts?
She is the joint president of the Scouts because the patron is?
The patron is the Duke of Kent, who is the Queen's cousin.
No, wrong.
Yes, Prince of Kent.
No.
No, it is. It's not.
She's joint president with the Duke of Kent.
Yes,
but
that's what I
who's the
said.
Patron?
Oh, the patron's the Queen.
Yeah.
Was that what your question was?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. So she's joint president with the Duke of Kent, who's the Queen's
Shall we start that again?
Okay, yeah. Ask me the question.
Who's the patron?
It's the Queen.
Well done.
Yeah, who's
10
the
marks.
joint president?
The Duke of Kent.
There we are.
There we are. We've cleared that up for you all.
Yes, so the Duke of Kent being the Queen's cousin, whose father is one of King George VI's younger brothers.
Correct.
Yes.
Moving on from the Duke of Kent.
Prince Henry, I think, but I'll come back to you on that one. Anyhow, so there's some good pictures were released of that and Kate's new role with the Scouts, which when I was very young, which is a very long time ago, the Scouts were just for boys, but they're now for boys and girls.
Boys and girls, yes.
Yeah.
And Kate released a nice message this week and talking about the work that the Scouts do, but she also volunteered for the Scouts when she was on Anglesey when they lived over there. So she's seen a lot firsthand and she's been very involved with the work that they've done. We've seen her on a number of engagements. So it seems quite an appropriate role for her to take on.
Where do you want to go next?
Northern Ireland.
Do you go to Northern Ireland?
I think so.
So we got off a plane last night, actually, from Belfast, where Prince Charles and Camilla went for the day. Mm-hmm. I suppose in the interest of transparency, and we'll find out in next year's Sovereign Grant report. They flew there. I didn't see them on my plane, which I imagine they chartered a plane for this particular trip. We will find out the cost of that trip and bring it to you in next year's Sovereign Grant report. But a very important visit. Actually, the key for us, I think, the key visit, there were a number, but the key visit was the one that she made to this domestic violence charity, which helps women who have escaped or trying to escape from their violent partners. The key point in that is that the coronavirus lockdown has made it much, much worse. Yeah,
so we visited the Belfast and Lisbon Women's Aid Centre and we talked to them a lot about how, during the lockdown, how we were all told to stay at home and how home is supposed to be safe for most people, but for actually people that are being abused, it is the worst possible place to be because you're essentially locked down with your abuser. And one woman we spoke to when we were there said to us, had she have been locked down with her abuser, she's fortunately out of that relationship now, she said she wouldn't have lived. So I think for a lot of women, it's been an incredibly dangerous time. We were actually fortunate enough, and quite rare, I think this is, to sit in the, I suppose, private meeting. It was meant to be private, but we were allowed to sit in there and listen to some of these women talk about the terrible times that they've had with their abusive partners. The room was silent. The Duchess listened, looking like she was visibly upset and moved by what they were telling her. Yeah, these women were, unbelievably brave and stood up one by one and told their stories. And like you say, you couldn't hear a pin drop. And the Duchess looked moved. And at one point, I actually thought she was on the verge of tears when one woman stood up and told us how, her abusive former partner had murdered 4 of her children. That is just unbelievably shocking. And this is a woman who'd ended up in Northern Ireland from Somalia, wasn't it? And but the Duchess said to them at the end of that meeting how brave they'd all been. We would obviously agree with that as well, but this is what the Duchess said to them.
Thank you so much for being brave enough to tell me your stories. I think you're an incredible bunch of women and men. Very brave to come this year now as well. And I also, women say, for all they do for these women and men. I don't know what they would do without them. Listening to all of you today, you wouldn't be sitting here today if it wasn't for them. So thank you very much indeed for all you do.
The other quite astonishing thing for us is that the Northern Ireland, which is one of the 4 nations of the UK, has the worst rates of domestic violence anywhere in Europe. It shares that rather depressing leaderboard with Romania. 32,000 calls to the PSNI, which is the Police Service of Northern Ireland, last year, which is 90 cases a day. Yeah, that was an increase of almost 600 on the previous 12 months, and they have had year on year since records began, their figures have gone up every year, and they've released figures showing the period between April and June, which is obviously when we were locked down, and during that period the PSNI received 8,302
domestic abuse incidents, which was a rise on the previous 3 months. A rise on the same period in the previous year, and equates to 91 incidents a day.
And we spoke to, on this very important subject, we spoke to Kelly Andrews, who's the Chief Executive of Belfast and Lisbon Women's Aid, who told us about the depressing impact of lockdown for many women.
We were very alarmed at the beginning of lockdown, just because the nature of domestic abuse, and for many women that meant that they were locked inside with their abuser. So while we understood that the message was, stay home, stay safe, for many people, being locked inside with their abuser is not a safe place to be.
It was the worst possible place
Absolutely.
to be for many women.
And it was stressful for healthy families, people not going to work, children not going to school, all being in that environment.
How much difference does a visit by the Duchess of Cornwall, who, we know Camilla cares a lot about domestic violence and campaigns a lot for the victims of it, how much does her visit mean to the women she met today?
It will mean an enormous amount. It raises the profile. Obviously, Her Royal Highness has a worldwide profile, and she's been a great advocate for domestic violence services. So it's getting the message out there to any women that are at home and that are listening in or are watching this interview, that there's help and support available, and they do not need to suffer in silence. That help and support is there, and please do reach out, because we are listening.
So that was one of the visits that they did in Northern Ireland. Prince Charles went to a food factory. They went to Hillsborough Castle. It was also a really good picture. Again, go onto our social media pages if you want to see it. But it was not the Game of Thrones throne, because I've seen that in Croatia where they filmed.
Is that in Dubrovnik?
Yes.
Yeah.
Game of Thrones was also filmed in part in Northern Ireland, and when they went to Ulster Museum, someone had made a wicker basket version of the Game of Thrones chair, I think. But anyway, have a look at these pictures or head onto our social media pages of Charles and Camilla pointing at that particular item. It's always interesting when you get members of the royal family looking at another throne from a TV programme.
Something I've never seen. Game of Thrones.
You've never seen?
Never seen.
I've seen some, but not all. So I kind of know what they're talking about. But there we are. Right, Harry and Meghan, not out of the news. Another week goes by, Harry and Meghan not out of the news. In fact, in it quite a bit this week, really.
Yeah, in it quite a bit. There was a front page of The Sun one day this week. The only way is Sussex. If you live in the UK, you'll know that's a play on The Only Way is Essex, which is a reality show here. A great headline, but it was claiming that Harry and Meghan, as part of their new Netflix deal, this £1 million Netflix deal, that they were going to do a sort of fly-on-the-wall reality series.
Yes, quickly shot down by Team Sussex, to be fair, although it was on the front page of the Sun newspaper. We should point out one of the tabloids that Harry and Meghan are no longer cooperating with. They told us there were two programmes that they've agreed with Netflix. One is a nature series, one is...
It's about celebrating inspiring women.
Celebrating inspiring women. That said, I mean, I know they would knock down the whole reality TV thing. We're not going to have a Keeping Up with the Kardashians in the Sussex's house.
As much as I think some people would love to see The Only Way is Sussex.
But I doubt that Netflix would have handed over quite so many millions of pounds to Harry and Meghan had they not agreed at least to be sort of on show, in vision, as we say in this industry, in some of the programming that they're making.
Yeah, the draw of Harry and Meghan, of course they do a lot of important work, but the draw of Harry and Meghan is Harry and Meghan themselves, and people, want to hear from them and see them, and Netflix will want their money's worth from Harry and Meghan.
Flesh, yes.
Their pound of flesh, as I've seen.
So let's see where that goes. But we should be clear, shot down by Team Sussex. They say there's only two programmes that have been agreed with Netflix and no reality TV show in the making. I mean, these are my words, not theirs, yet.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if we saw, cameras follow the kind of work that they're doing, or the charity work that they're doing, and some of the projects they're involved in a sort of way like that, rather than cameras in their home. I can't imagine we'd ever get that, but as it stands, that's being that's all being shot down.
Let's do the court case, the continuing ongoing court case between Meghan Markle and the Mail on Sunday over their publication of the letter that she had written to her father. Now, I was in court for a whole day last week, kind of until gone 6 o'clock in the evening, and we didn't get a decision. This week you took our seat in the court and was in there for about 10 minutes and you got a decision.
We did. They went through everything that you went through.
Who did better out of that?
They went through everything that you'd heard and the arguments for and against, and basically...
Went through everything in 10 minutes that I'd heard in 8 hours.
Yeah, exactly. But Meghan has lost this round, and the Mail on Sunday can rely on the recent biography, Finding Freedom, in their case.
So I should put that as kind of like 2-1 now, as I make it, in terms of the pre-trial hearings, and none of this is at trial yet. Can we just be clear on that? That happens in the new year, we think, possibly January.
And actually the judge said that this amendment wouldn't affect the trial date. It's one of the things that's taken into consideration.
So we're still looking at January and a 10-day trial at the High Court, which I'm sure there'll be a huge amount of interest in. So we're still at the pre-trial stage hearing. Of the sort of rulings that the judges have made, 2 have gone the way of the Mail on Sunday. 1 has gone Meghan's way. That was keeping her friends
private. Yeah.
But this one, the Mail on Sunday, is now being told that it can amend its defence in order to reflect all the things that we read or seen or heard about or written about in Finding Freedom, the biography by Omid Scobie and Carolyn Durand. Essentially, the Mail claiming that Harry and Meghan did cooperate with the authors and therefore gave away a lot of private information, either through their friends or directly. Team Meghan clearly and her legal team disputed that, but the judge...
Yeah, and actually Team Meghan tried to appeal against the ruling. They were told that they couldn't, but they could pursue a challenge at the Court of Appeal if they wanted to.
We think this loss, as it were, for Team Sussex has cost them £180,000.
Yeah, close to £180,000 plus associated newspapers. So
and they'd already had to pay something like £70,000 on the one they'd lost before.
Yeah.
Right.
So this is all racking up quite quickly, and like you say, we're not even at the trial stage yet.
But as we heard last week, as we probably told you in last week's podcast, the combined costs for both sides are now projected to be in around the £3 million mark, and it is million, yes, not. I've got some things wrong when it comes to millions and thousands in previous weeks. But anyway, £3 million mark. So I
think the judge's key point as to why she has allowed this amendment is that it doesn't actually add any new, what she calls, defences to the Associated Newspapers case. It just adds to their particulars.
Yes, and their case is that actually Meghan's a public figure and they had a sort of public interest defence in publishing this letter to her father, which Meghan says was private and confidential, and they're now using the book to support them. In a way, I wonder whether the book that was meant to, write the story from Harry and Meghan's perspective, and the authors are clear about that, I wonder whether in this particular case and on this particular instance, it's kind of working against them.
Oh yeah, we talked a lot last week, didn't we, about how they've had to put some clear water between themselves and this book.
Even to the extent of rubbishing some of the things that have been written in it.
Yeah, and saying that, I think we talked last week about how they talk about how there's creative license in the book. A lot of what it includes is already in the public domain. There's, anodyne material in there. I mean, they're really putting some air between them.
They've also been on air again.
They have,
I was trying to find a decent segue, that was a pretty poor one. So last week we told you about the Time video in which they sort of kind of didn't wade into the US election. They encouraged people to vote, but it was seen as being a little controversial, particularly from Harry's point of view. Mm-hmm. This week Meghan's been at a virtual conference for some of the most powerful women in the world.
Yeah, the Fortune Most Powerful Women Summit.
Right. And explaining how she doesn't quite understand why everything that she says is misinterpreted.
Yep. Should we hear from her?
Yes, go on.
You're not the only powerful woman, even in this community, who has had a sitting president take a shot at you, mobs come at you, powerful people and powerful forces try to take you down or try to disparage your message. This is a tough time for people with power and platforms. What is your best advice for other folks with stakeholders, with a desire to weigh in on the important issues of the day, to take those risks carefully, to assess them correctly, and then to weigh in.
Yes, I mean, I think it's about being authentic. And if you look back at anything that I've said, it's really interesting because it often what ends up being inflammatory, it seems, is people's interpretation of it. But if you listen to what I actually say, it's not controversial.
If you listen to what I actually say, it's not controversial. Discuss. It sounds like the topic of a university dissertation, really,
Yes,
isn't it?
exactly.
I'm sure some will be written in the course of the following years. But what did you make of it?
Well, anything Meghan and Harry say or do at the moment ends up in the papers. People pore over what they're doing, and whether that's from they said they wanted to leave the royal family and have a private life, and yet here they are, or their comments on the US election. Anything they do and say is looked at carefully. And I think, in terms of what's controversial, recently their comments on the US election have been regarded widely as controversial. She's been interpreted by lots of quarters as showing support for Joe Biden in the upcoming election.
Well, yeah, but we discussed last week, we kind of know where Meghan is on that. I mean, the issue was Harry, and because they promised that when they left the royal family they would uphold the values of the Queen. The Queen, one of her values is being impartial, and therefore, I mean, having watched bits of the US election debate, which was a bit of a train crash, really, wasn't it? Train wreck. But it's kind of an election that we know is going to be very bitter and very fraught, and perhaps the advice to Harry and Meghan might have been, or could be, stay out of it entirely.
Yeah, but she's made her position quite clear that she wants to encourage people to vote, to get out there and vote. And I actually don't think that's where the problem lies. The problem lies when she starts to talk about that this is the most important election to vote in ever because change is more important this time than it ever has been before. I mean, you can quite easily see why people are interpreting that as that she wants a change in president.
Yeah, I mean, we ran the clip last week. Go back on last week's podcast if you want to see it, where Meghan said that Donald Trump was both divisive and misogynistic. We know what Meghan thinks. I think the difficulty for them is what Harry has said. But I think the point that Meghan is making here is like, why is everything that she says, every time she opens her mouth, there is controversy.
There is. Every time they do anything,
yeah.
it is looked at, and there's hundreds of acres of column inches given over to what they say and do. People are very interested in them.
And on that vein, Harry and Meghan have actually been speaking to the Evening Standard. Actually, today's the 1st of October, which means it's the start of Black History Month. And Harry and Meghan have re-entered the debate about racism and saying it's time to end structural racism in the UK. Yeah,
they've done a fair bit on this recently. And I mean, I think, do you want to read some of their comments just because it's only just...
Yeah, so basically they called for Britain to grasp an opportunity for change, and they warned that young people of colour will be held back, quotes, as long as structural racism exists, which is basically saying that Britain has a problem with structural racism, and it's going to make things worse for people of colour. They said the UK can be made a better country by white people understanding more about life for those of a different coloured skin. And they were obviously speaking on Zoom from Santa Barbara at the start of Black History Month. Harry even spoke of his own awakening to the lack of opportunities for people from the BAME community.
Yeah, I mean, they've been involved in the debate around Black Lives Matter movement. They've spoken openly about it. And I actually think this is where Harry and Meghan can use their voices to do good. They've stepped away from the royal family. They've got some more freedom to do the things that they want to support and the things that they want to talk about. And while, yes, lots of what they do is regarded as controversial, lots of what they do is actually really good, and they can help by their profile and their position. They can help affect change and kind of draw attention to important causes.
Yeah, and Harry also has spoken, previously about how, his perception of how people of colour live in the UK, it has been changed, but ever since he married Meghan and just saw some of the abuse that she was getting online on social media, which was criticised at the time. And I think that, as you say, this is a chance for Harry and Meghan to make a difference, and this is where they really can make a difference. And I don't think a lot of people will necessarily disagree with them. And we just had a discussion about everything they said seems to be controversial. This, however, would be, I think, an opportunity for them to really make a big difference.
Yeah, Prince Harry made that speech recently, didn't he, for the Diana Award. Meghan's done, she did a video for her former high school where she talked about it. And yeah, like we say, this is kind of where they can use their platform.
And I think it's one of the subjects where they really do want to make a difference as well. Now, we had a very sad moment in this country last week when a police officer was shot and killed in a police station, a very rare moment in this country, and moved a lot of people. Now, last Sunday was National Police Memorial Day, and Prince Charles released a video on that day when he spoke about the sacrifice that police officers make in the line of duty.
Ladies and gentlemen, this year, as a nation, we have been challenged in ways we could never have anticipated. We have faced an unseen but deadly threat amid disrupted and ever-changing circumstances. However, throughout all the uncertainty, we have learned, as never before, to value those things of which we can always be certain, such as the steadfast dedication to duty of our police forces throughout the United Kingdom. While sadly we cannot gather in the usual manner to mark this special day of remembrance, we can all take a moment to honour those who have paid the ultimate price and who have given their lives in the service of others. I particularly wish to remember those officers who have so tragically lost their lives since we met in Glasgow last year. The dreadful incident in Croydon on Friday is the latest heartbreaking evidence of the risks faced by our officers daily. I would like to send my deepest sympathy to the families of each of these officers who have given their lives. These are losses we can never replace, sacrifices we can never repay, but of which, as a society, we can only strive to be worthy.
So some moving words from Prince Charles. And looking ahead to next week, Earthshot Prize for Prince William, the ITV documentary. I mean, actually having looked through here, they've been to a lot of places with them, not just Birkenhead, we've got them here, and Liverpool. They've been to Tanzania, they've been to the Scottish Highlands.
Documentary crew has been following Prince William for a couple of years, looking at all his environmental work, and that'll be on ITV on Monday the 5th, and then later that week we will see the Earthshot Prize be officially launched. So
more details to come.
More details to come on that, which we can talk about in detail next week.
Right, okay, thank you very much. Busy old week again in Royal Land. We appreciate you watching either on YouTube or on Spotify. To subscribe on whatever platform you watch us or listen to us on, and we appreciate every single view and every single listen. See you next week.